Morning, a grey start in places, still the risk of some light rain and drizzle across central northern parts of England into southern Scotland, but it does brighten up quite quickly for most parts of the UK. Best of the sunshine across southern parts of England and Wales, perhaps one or two heavy showers developing here. Later on in the afternoon, temperatures rising to around 20 or 21 degrees. A little cooler further north under the cloud, particularly Northern Ireland, southern Scotland here around about 13 or 14 Celsius. A murky start once more on Wednesday, but fog patches lifting and then dry for most, plenty of sunny spells, perhaps some low cloud just lingering around some coastal areas, but feeling warm in that sunshine as temperatures start to lift further, and more sunshine on the way to end the week as well as temperatures rise towards the mid-20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Shouts of Allahu Akbar at the local elections, and this. That is Burnley, not Baghdad, and...
We are coming for you in the general election.
A list of Sharia-based demands to Labour. What is going on in British politics also tonight?
When I was doing drill practice on Whale Island with my reserve unit in the pouring rain every Tuesday night was, why am I doing this? Now I know why. It was so I could hold that sword at the coronation.
An exclusive with Penny Mordaunt on the anniversary of the King's coronation. Plus...
Stop the bombing down, 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 down! We are the people! We won't be silent!
100 university lecturers and staff take part in a pro-Palestine protest, and breaking tonight. Yes, those are live shots as Israel begins its invasion of Rafah after rejecting a ceasefire deal from Hamas. We will keep you up to date on that. Also...
Takeoff clearance, cancel takeoff clearance. We received some information regarding a bomb threat.
A pilot's ice-cold reaction to a bomb threat on board, and...
What he needs to do to salvage this dire situation is to accept the enormity of the problem, these terrible results.
Nigel Farage reacts live to Suella coming out swinging. On my panel tonight, it is Express political guru Christian Calgie, founder of Global Britain, Aman Bagal, and anarchist Lisa McKenzie. Oh, yes. And can you guess what happens next? Oh, yes, OK. You know what? Can I just play that one more time? One more time. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Get ready for a war. Next.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom, and we start with that breaking news. Within the last hour, Israel's defence forces have begun a targeted attack against Hamas in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Now, if you're watching on TV, you can see live pictures. The military operation began after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that his war cabinet had approved the operation. Strikes are currently being carried out in the east of Rafah. Earlier, Israel ordered a partial evacuation of civilians ahead of this offensive. Mr. Netanyahu says strikes will increase pressure on Hamas to release Israeli hostages. Comes after Israel rejected a three-phase ceasefire deal, which Hamas claimed to have agreed with Egyptian mediators. An Israeli official described the deal as softened and said that it was a ruse intended to make them look bad. However, we understand that Israel is sending a delegation to meet with negotiators to try to reach an acceptable agreement. Now, there's been no deal on a ceasefire in Gaza since a week-long pause in November. We'll bring you more on this story as we get it. Now, as you've been hearing, students at Oxford and Cambridge have set up Gaza protest camps on their university campuses. Created in the early hours of this morning, the protesters are urging their universities to cut financial ties with Israel over the country's offensive in Gaza. Similar camps have also been set up at Manchester, Sheffield, Newcastle and London universities. Oxford issued a statement saying that they respect their students' and staff members' right to freedom of expression in the form of peaceful protests. Rishi Sunak says he's determined to fight, and the general election is not a foregone conclusion. The Prime Minister is calling for unity among Tory MPs after saying that he believes Britain could be heading for a hung parliament. The Tories lost hundreds of council seats and the West Midlands mayoralty, results Rishi Sunak described as bitterly disappointing, but he's saying he won't give up.
What the independent analysis shows that whilst of course this was a disappointing weekend for us, the result of the next general election isn't a foregone conclusion, and indeed actually is closer than, or the situation is closer than many people are saying, or indeed some of the opinion polls are predicting. And that's why I'm absolutely determined to fight incredibly hard for what I believe and for the future country that I want to build, and that's what I'm going to do.
Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says he'll table a motion of no confidence in the government in an effort to pressure Mr Sunak to call a June general election. Sir Ed claims that the disastrous local election results show the country has, in his words, had enough of Rishi Sunak and his out-of-touch government. The motion will be tabled when Parliament returns tomorrow. And finally, new SNP leader John Swinney says he'll seek to build a coalition of the willing to focus on Scotland's problems, but he won't resurrect the power-sharing deal with the Scottish Greens. In his acceptance speech, Mr Swinney called for unity and said that the polarisation of politics doesn't serve the country. Mr Swinney's appointment was unopposed. He's expected to be voted in as Scotland's First Minister later this week. If you'd like the latest stories, sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Patrick.
Well, you've seen the totally mentally coherent group Queers for Palestine. Well, get ready for the hard-hitting and powerful impact of Street Skaters for Palestine. Well, now the pro-Palestine movement is sweeping campuses across the country. We've had Manchester, Newcastle, Sheffield, Leeds, Warwick, Swansea and Bristol, and now Oxford and Cambridge have succumbed. There are camps being set up outside Oxford and Cambridge universities. Oxford for Palestine published their list of demands. Shall we have a little read through them? So it says, disclose all finances, divest from Israeli genocide, apartheid and occupation, overhaul the university's investment policy, boycott Israeli genocide, apartheid and occupation, stop banking with Barclays and help rebuild Gaza's education system. Well, it's worth noting that the Cambridge pro-Palestine camp spokesman refused to condemn Hamas or describe them as a terror group when questioned by The Telegraph. Shall we have a look at some of Hamas's useful idiots? But over at Oxford, 108 lecturers, faculty members and researchers from multiple colleges have now signed a letter of support. The Dons are at it. How do you think Jewish or Conservative students feel there now? Footage has emerged of a Jewish student studying at Cambridge being shoved around and having the Israeli flag ripped away from him.
There you are, sir. Well done.
So that is just totally tolerated on campus now, isn't it? I'm surprised they had time to fit that into their day, though, because there is a busy schedule, which they published. 8 a.m, camp opens, playlist begins. 9 a.m, de-escalation training for all campers. 11 a.m, community guidelines, reading of demands. 1 p.m, lunch, followed by banner making. 3 p.m, rally. 6 p.m, dinner funded by, you guessed it, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Then 7 to 9 p.m, camp community stall. And, oh, yep, the news and reflection, that was at 8 p.m, yeah. Anyway, they're clearly planning on being there for a long time because they've set up an emergency toilet. I mean, I imagine that's absolutely overflowing because most of these students are full of... Anyway, Tory MP Miriam Kate speaks for many when she says the Blairite aspiration to send half of all young people to university has backfired spectacularly. Spending 3 years detached from the real world, spending someone else's money, is not always the best start to adult life. Academic learning and common sense are not the same thing. They've got masks on their faces because they're worried about being identified in case they get arrested or kicked out of university, or it harms their future job prospects. A strong indication that even they realise that they might grow out of this nonsense one day. But listen closely to what some of these people are saying.
The US movement set off a global chain of reaction, and we're so excited to be a part of that and thankful to the US encampments for what they began. Although the US and the UK have different contexts, the UK government is similarly complicit in Israeli war crimes, and so too are our institutions of higher education. So we learned a lot from them in terms of our demands, how to engage with our governments, and how to mobilize students.
Interesting accent there. And now this one.
Also know that the University of Oxford, through its investments, through its moral statements, and through its business partnerships and academic partnerships, is directly complicit in the genocide in Gaza and in the Israeli occupation and apartheid.
Another interesting accent. I mean, they think they're in America, don't they? They think they're part of that movement. The only thing more annoying than Americans loudly navigating the London Underground is Americans coming to our universities and kicking off on campus. They've looked at these cretins and taken inspiration.
Isn't ending until our demands are met.
Should we take down the tax? No!
Our responsibility to figure it out. We, the students, have given you our demands. We have organized here together, and we are not leaving until you figure it out.
One of the earlier clips was put out by the Socialist Workers' Party, and the Palestine Solidarity Campaign is involved. These same people are always involved Whether it's protesting about a migrant bus going to the Bibi Stockholm, whether it's the environment, whether it's outside school gates, it's the same groups of agitators every single time. Now, I've got a solution. Tell these students that if they take part in pro-Palestine protests, their student loan will be revoked. We'll soon find out how many of them are actually students and how many of them are rent-a-mob jobless activists. But before I get the thoughts of my panel, let me bring in Charlie Woods. So, Charlie is a legal student in Oxford, and he was down at the protest today. Look, Charlie, thank you very much. Now, I understand that you're working to try to stop this occupation, aren't you? What's going on?
Well, our primary role is really just to support students and help them understand what their options are. It's actually very difficult for students to be able to use, particularly the legal system, to defend their rights. If they want to issue things like complaints to the university, that can be effective. However, they require a listening ear. And the Vice-Chancellor of Oxford University so far seems to not be doing very much.
Okay. What kind of stuff is he hearing, though? What kind of stuff are you hearing, Charlie? What kind of stuff is the university potentially ignoring?
So mainly it's students being isolated, ignored, very dismissive of anything to do with comments about inappropriateness of anti-Semitism and so forth. So it's not easy for students to be able to exercise their rights and defend themselves. What does a student do, for example, if all their classmates ignore them, as has happened, particularly after October 7th? What happens if rhetoric on public forums or at JCRs becomes very intimidatory and very nasty and vicious? It's really a major failure of education.
No, it is. And just to clarify, Charlie, without, giving anything away that might identify anyone, you mentioned a couple of examples there. So students at Oxford who presumably are pro-Israel are being given the silent treatment and ignored, are they, by some of their classmates? The general rhetoric behind the scenes is, overwhelmingly pro-Palestine. Are there any, other examples of just what's going on behind the curtain here at these universities, these prestigious universities?
I'll give you one particular example I've heard of. I have heard of a student asking for their professor to remove all Zionists from the classroom, which is something that has been told to me. It is something that I've heard, and students are very reluctant to come forward and challenge these kinds of incidents, because first of all they have to go through their entire degree. And coming forward with a complaint, particularly if it's against a lecturer or an academic, can be extremely risky for them personally. And also, if they want to pursue a career in academia, they will require references. So there is a lot of internal failure to sort of prevent intimidation.
Look, Charlie, thank you very much, and we will talk again on this. And, good luck with everything that you're doing. Charlie Woods there is working in law in Oxford. Right, OK, look, let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I am joined by senior political correspondent at the Daily Express. It's Christy and Calgie. I have also got the anarchist and academic Lisa Mackenzie and the founding chairman of Global Britain UK, Aman Bagar. Look, Christine, I'll start with you. What we're seeing on campuses here is quite astonishing, I think, really.
Well, it is, but universities have always been hotbeds of left-wing ideologies. I think the problem is combining a student naivety with what is increasingly becoming an escalation of protest tactics. The problem is the more people get used to the extreme tactics that have been used by Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, they have to go above and beyond to get media and social media attention. I think there's also a been a massive expansion of narcissism amongst young people. You always hear this, and I don't want to blame her specifically, but it did seem to start with Greta Thunberg, which is that younger and younger people, not just expecting a right to have an opinion, but the right or you know, a belief that their opinion should then be completely taken on board and enacted without, you know, like they're the sole arbiter of what's right in the world. And I think that's what I can't stand.
These protesters outside the universities, I mean, just take a student loan off them, no?
You see, you're getting all this wrong, Patrick. It's wrong. Don't think these are not working class students. These are middle class. These are probably very wealthy students. And especially if they're at Oxford and Cambridge, they're not likely to be working class students. Take their student loans off them. Their mums and dads will be paying for everything. You know, working class students don't have this sort of luxury beliefs because they're probably working full-time jobs, studying full-time and worrying about their communities and families. This stuff is it's luxury beliefs by students that have got time and money to have them. And so, you know, don't mix these people up with
I think one thing that I will say is I remain unconvinced as to actually how many of these people will turn out to be genuine students, because having been to a number of protests not dissimilar to this now, it appears to be a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same groups that are behind it. I suspect, Aman, that there are agitators there who are, whether they're paid or not, I don't know, but they make a career out of doing this. But why doesn't the government clamp down on this? Why don't the police get to the core of those agitators?
Well, we've seen already large numbers of two-tier policing, Patrick, and this is again indicative of that. But as you said, I think as we've seen in the US, a lot of people in the US are already reporting these tent cities that are cropping up in Berkeley, in Yale, in Harvard, in Columbia. They're sharing very much of the same colour, same brand tents, for example. And a lot of people are saying that the biggest donors to this agitator, to these fringe elements, to these cranks, as my panellists would say, are some of Joe Biden's biggest donors. And you have to look at the money that is coming in, and it's being repeated in other democracies in the world. This is a disruption.
Have you noticed though that it's not at Salford University, it's not at where I work at the University of Bedfordshire, which has mainly got working class students. This is all elite universities. This is not at Manchester Met. You know, it's not at the ex-polys.
I think one of the concerns for me though, Christian, is that at Oxford, for example, 108 lecturers and other university staff have signed a letter supporting this stuff, and I find that very concerning, that this is running right through academia.
Yeah, I don't. It's not the first time in my life I've seen incredibly stupid left-wing academics actively supporting policies that would either harm their jobs or harm the institutions they work for. I mean, we saw throughout Brexit just how moronic some of these lecturers are. I would just say these are protests at the moment. If they go into the realm of what's been happening in America with occupations of buildings, graffitis, destruction of property, all the students involved in those should be out on their legs like that.
Yeah, I mean, it will be fascinating to see. You know, we're a thunderstorm away from a press conference where they're begging us for more shelter and food, aren't we? But we'll have to wait and see. Look, we're going to be talking a lot more about this a little bit later on, but still to come. I've got my exclusive interview with Lord President of the Privy Council, Penny Mordaunt. It's exactly 1 year on from the King's coronation.
When I was doing drill practice on Whale Island with my reserve unit in the pouring rain every Tuesday night was, why am I doing this? Now I know why. It was so I could hold that sword at the coronation.
Plus, I will ask Nigel Farage live about the potential socialist coalition from hell involving Labour, the SNP and the Greens. But up next, newly elected Green Party councillors appear to be absolutely feral.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Totally normal stuff there. He also hailed getting a seat as a win for the people of Gaza. So should that guy and councillors like him be immediately expelled? Chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mon, goes head-to-head with the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah al-Andalusi. And, of course, that breaking news tonight is that Israel has commenced its attack in Rafah. We are going to be taking you live there with live images from the scene. So we'll keep you right up to date with all of that. It's Patrick Christys tonight, right here on GB News.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Now, American actress Melissa McCarthy has spoken out in defence of her best friend Meghan Markle, calling her an inspiring woman suffering hate for getting on with her life. And the Duchess of Sussex has faced widespread criticism after she sent 50 friends and influencers gift-wrapped jam jars to celebrate the launch of the first product of a new brand, American Riviera Orchard. Well, let's speak now to a great friend of the show, the former BBC Royal correspondent and a man who likes his jam, Michael Cole. Michael, the absurdity continues. What's the latest?
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. Yeah, the plot thickens even as the jam sets. This has become a major story. Even the great Financial Times took an interest at the weekend, helpfully pointing out that you can get a jar of Duchy organic strawberry jam for £2.80 at a well-known supermarket. Now, Duchy Organic, the proprietor of that, of course, is His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, the older brother of Prince Harry. And here we see it, American Riviera Orchard Montecito jam. We're getting here, this is getting very serious. And of course, her mates, she's got some interesting friends. Melissa McCarthy, who is an actress in something I've never heard of. But anyway, she says sticking up for good old Meghan, and Meghan's a woman of her own. And she, there we are seeing Miss McCarthy. But other friends of the great Meghan have taken a contrary view and think that going down this route of selling jam is not going to get her anywhere in life.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome along to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, look, coming up, are we staring down the barrel of a socialist coalition from hell? But first, should the Green Party's new pro-Palestine councillors be expelled? It's time for our head-to-head. And the Green Party's been forced to launch an investigation after concerns were raised about the behaviour of some of their new pro-Palestine councillors voted in at the local elections over the weekend. So this was Councillor Motin Ali's celebration after he won in Leeds.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Reports have since emerged stating that Ali played a pivotal role in the hounding of the Jewish chaplain at the University of Leeds, Rabbi Zachariah Deutsch, who went into hiding after receiving threats from pro-Palestine activists because he served with the Israeli army. But it's not just Motin Ali, apparently. Green Party councillor in Bristol, Mohammed Makawi, claimed in social media posts that Hamas's massacre of innocent Israelis was an American Zionist lie. And another Green councillor, Imtiaz Ali, branded Zionists as nothing more than common thieves, willing to massacre thousands in the process. That was in a Facebook post last December. So look, tonight I am asking, should these candidates be immediately expelled from the Green Party? Going head-to-head on this are the chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mond, and the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah Al-Andalusi. Gary, I'll start with you. What's your view? Should they be expelled?
My view is that anybody in politics of whatever party who advocates any form of violence has got no place in public life and no place in a major political party like the Green Party. When you shout Allahu Akbar, I appreciate that means God is great, but it is the shout that's used by Hamas terrorists and others who kill Jews in Israel. Allahu Akbar. If you shout that, you have no place in politics.
Abdullah, your views on that?
Firstly, I think that's quite ridiculous because Allahu Akbar is what Muslims say every time they pray. It means God is great. It's a Semitic word. Allah is a Semitic word. Jesus would have said a word similar to that. And it's simply just an exaltation. It should not be associated with people who commit terrorist acts. In fact, just as it would be anti-Semitic to blame all Jews for the act of Israel, it would be also anti-Muslim to demonise a Muslim exaltation of prayer simply because there are some individuals in the world that haven't used it improperly.
Does it change that slightly, Abdullah, when the whole point of him standing is as he says, you know, for Gaza and for Palestine? Does it change that? Because, I mean, I'm not hearing any kind of denunciation of Hamas there. So is there a context there when it comes to shouting that or not?
Well, it would appear that his platform is anti-genocide, pro-Palestinian rights, and he campaigned on that platform to guarantee the rights of British people, presumably, to be able to protest free from government harassment, demonisation, and the attempt to curb people's democratic rights in the UK to do demonstrations and protests. But as for the issue of him simply presenting his religious beliefs alongside his political campaigning, I mean, no one would complain that Katie Forbes, who is vocally Christian, represents her Christian beliefs, Minister for the Scottish Parliament, that no one would say, at least on the right-wing spectrum, would say that she should be limited and restricted or should be condemned for mentioning her Christian beliefs.
I get what you mean, but unfortunately people did condemn it, and the whole gay marriage stuff was one of the reasons why initially she was unsuccessful. Well, Gary, your views on this? I mean, the shout of Allahu Akbar, right, that's one thing. What do you reckon about the kind of relentless, the pro-Palestine stuff, the idea that they're saying, you know, we're coming for you, the Labour Party, and all of those things?
I think it's a real tragedy that local politics has been interfered in by religious fanaticism. That is the tragedy for our country, and that's the big picture. And I really absolutely condemn it. The involvement of this. There are far more important local issues that affect constituencies all over the country, and people have been voting in the elections, and to suddenly have the events of 2,000 miles away brought into play as an election issue is tragic in our country.
And Abdullah, it's not really all about Palestine, is it? We saw very quickly the MuslimVote.co.uk issuing a list of 18 demands to the Labour leader. One of those was to be banging in favour of Sharia pensions, for example. I mean, what's all that about?
No, well, firstly, religion doesn't have anything to do about it. Anyone who has any humanitarian bone in their body would feel sorry for the plight of the Palestinians.
But what's the Sharia pension got to do?
That have been denied their independence for 77 years.
OK.
Under the justification that Jewish Europeans have a better right to Palestine than native Palestinians.
My point is all the Arab Jews who came to Israel when it was formed? It's not Jewish European country.
Well, who formed? Who set up the Zionist movement in the first place? It was Jewish Europeans.
The Arab Jews. Wait. Let Abdullah finish, and then we'll go to you.
When the state of Israel was established, there was no Arab. There wasn't many Arab Jews in Israel anyway. We're talking about who set up the Zionist movement. It was Jewish Europeans who argued that they have a superior right to native Palestinians. Can I just stop us here?
Because actually, what I am talking about is the potential for a new religious movement within British politics, which is directly relevant to this. And certain things like the Sharia pensions, for example, that to me seems like, is it one step away? The natural progression from that, I suppose, would arguably be things like blasphemy laws. And is that what happens when you get more councillors standing and winning on a overtly Muslim ticket?
Wait, well, Sharia pensions this is a red herring. There are, Judaism-compliant pensions in the UK, which is no one would say, oh no, Jewish law is coming to the UK. You'd be condemned as an anti-Semite for that, rightfully so. So likewise, if people want to voluntarily enter into contractual agreements for pensions, which are just Sharia-compliant, how's that an issue if it's voluntary, it's consensual, no one's being forced to it? If other religions get that privilege too, well, it's not even a privilege, it's just a simple, basic civil right. So I think bringing religion into this is a big red herring to distract from from the issue that British people want to have their rights protected when they are demonstrating and protesting against a genocide happening across the world that Britain has been involved with.
Gary, in your view, is it really all about Palestine, do you think?
No, I think if you look at the 18 requests, the 18 demands from the Muslim vote, there's a great deal of worry, which I think Jews and Christians and others will feel alike, in the requirement for legislation to make Islamophobia an offence, because I think that it's perfectly OK to criticise Judaism, it's perfectly OK to criticise Christianity, and it must also be perfectly OK to criticise Islam in certain situations.
So do you think then homophobia should be legalised as well, then?
I don't believe homophobia should be legalised.
So then why Islamophobia is an issue for you that you think, well, that should be legalised, but not homophobia? It's not about the criticism of Islam, it's the criticism of Muslims for being Muslim. That is the issue. The term, that's what simply it means. So if we have definitions of anti-Semitism that include the criticism of Israel, which is ridiculous, right, then surely we should be for criticising Muslims for simply being Muslim and for demonising Muslims and scaremongering Muslims for simply just wanting the same civil rights as every other people in this country.
Parallel to anti-Semitism is anti-Muslim hatred, and I totally condemn all forms of anti-Muslim hatred.
OK, look, guys, can we just park it? Because we are going to just chat now quickly, albeit, but about the ongoing situation in Rafah. So Israel's invasion of Rafah has begun. We have a live shot of it right now. So as we understand it anyway, it's a ground invasion. We think it started a couple of hours ago. Ceasefire talks broke down. I think this is quite possibly going to have big consequences here in Britain. Again, we've spoken a lot about the councillors there. We've spoken a lot about some of the protests taking place. Abdullah, how do you feel when you see what's going on over here?
Well, ceasefire talks haven't broken down. Apparently, Hamas has agreed to the proposal that was given to them, and the question is now the ball's in the court of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, who, with right-wing pressure, are told to continue military operations despite any ceasefire agreement. He's facing that pressure, and most likely he won't care. As he stated before, it won't matter at all to his military campaign to whatever ceasefire agreement is agreed.
Gary, is what's going to happen now justified?
Yes, absolutely. A fundamental requirement of Israel is the elimination of Hamas. To for us ever have peace in the region, Hamas has to go, and this is a necessary step taken to ensure that Hamas does go. And what happened was when it seemed that Hamas was agreeing, they were agreeing with an amended Egyptian-Qatari proposal, which didn't take account of Israel's requirement for Hamas to be removed.
Hamas are a symptom of a very long problem. Hamas wasn't there from 1948, the beginning of Israel. Palestinian resistance has been for 77 years. Right, Hamas is only some recent
but they do have to go,
that
right?
Benjamin Netanyahu himself argued was useful for him to deny the Palestinians a state.
But they do have to go.
The issue is who? Sorry,
Hamas. They've got to go, right?
I think that the ICC should put arrest warrants for everyone who's participated in genocide and killing civilians, including the Israeli government and so on and so forth.
What about Hamas, though?
Yeah. Well, let the ICC issue arrest warrants to everyone and indict them in court. If they have nothing to worry,
I mean, that's
if they are innocent, they have nothing to worry. They should be arrested. Anyone who's ordered the killing of civilians should be arrested. That includes the Israeli government more so, who've killed far more civilians, inclling women and children, than Hamas ever have.
This is a war that was started by Hamas. It must be finished.
No, it was a war started by Israel 50, 60 years ago.
Ridiculous.
And they have blockaded Gaza.
5 Arab armies attacked Israel in 1948.
They were bombing Gaza in May last year. Forget 5 months before the 7th of October. They've been bombing Gaza consistently.
OK, well, look, we obviously could carry this on all night. Thank you very, very much. And hopefully we'll pick this up again at some point soon. Look, coming up 1 year on for the coronation, Penny Mordaunt tells all about how she prepared for that sword-bearing marathon.
When I was doing drill practice on Whale Island with my reserve unit in the pouring rain every Tuesday night was, why am I doing this? Now I know why. It was so I could hold that sword at the coronation.
Don't miss my exclusive with the Lord President of the Privy Council. But next, new data suggests that there will be a hung parliament at the next general election. Rishi Sunak claimed Labour, the SNP and the Greens could get into bed together. So just how much should we fear what would potentially be a socialist coalition from hell? Nigel Farage is on and he's next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's becoming drier over the next 24 hours, But with light winds, we could see some fog patches tonight developing, and that's thanks to an area of high pressure moving in, which then stays with us for much of the week. Temperatures rising, particularly by the end of the week into the weekend, highs of 24 or 25 in the best of the sunshine. This evening time, still some heavy thundery showers easing away. The rain across southeast England also moves out of the way. Most places dry overnight, but that allows some mist and fog patches to form in places. Under the cloudier skies, temperatures holding up though, around 10 or 11 Celsius. So Tuesday morning, a grey start in places, still the risk of some light rain and drizzle across central northern parts of England into southern Scotland, but it does brighten up quite quickly for most parts of the UK. Best of the sunshine across southern parts of England and Wales, perhaps 1 or 2 heavy showers developing here. Later on in the afternoon, temperatures rising to around 20 or 21 degrees. A little cooler further north under the cloud, particularly Northern Ireland, southern Scotland here, around about 13 or 14 Celsius. A murky start once more on Wednesday, but fog patches lifting and then dry for most, plenty of sunny spells, perhaps some low cloud just lingering around some coastal areas, but feeling warm in that sunshine as temperatures start to lift further, and more sunshine on the way to end the week as well as temperatures rise towards the mid-20s.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The biggest of occasions for England's smallest county. In Rutland, there isn't a single statue. Now there shall be, of one of the most important people in British history, the late Queen. Lord Lieutenant Sarah Furness represents the monarch in the county.
Her Majesty provided us all with a sense of stability and continuity. As head of state, she gave us national identity.
Raising £140,000 in donations, mostly from individuals, the statue in the town of Oakham is the first of its kind to be unveiled since the death of Queen Elizabeth. Howell Pratley is the sculptor.
I am a big fan of public sculpture, being integral to, a friendly, caring community.
Young and old are lining the streets to catch a glimpse of the 7-foot statue, including 89-year-old Joyce Lucas in the front row.
We met her on several occasions in Oakham, and we've got some lovely photographs and lovely, lovely memories. She is the Queen. She was great. She was brilliant, and we miss her.
The Queen's death broke the nation's heart. Her memorial is filling Rutlands with pride. Her image, taken from early Middle Age, set in bronze.
It's a real fitting tribute to the late Queen.
I think it captures our late Majesty's humanity, but also she looks so regal.
Absolutely beautiful.
Queen Elizabeth was Britain's longest reigning monarch. Her reign was great, unlikely to be matched by future king or queen. A legacy of unwavering service recorded in a place of permanent remembrance. Will Hollis, GB News in Oakham.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, my exclusive interview with Penny Mordaunt, 1 year on from the King's coronation. But first, a shocking new poll has revealed that Labour would fall short of a majority at the next general election, raising fears that Britain could be heading for a socialist coalition government, with Keir Starmer's party propped up by the SNP, the Lib Dems and the Greens. That's despite Rishi Sunak today acknowledging a bitterly disappointing local election result, which saw the Tories lose nearly 500 council seats, as well as the West Midlands mayoralty. I'm joined now by GB News star Nigel Farage. Nigel, thank you very, very much. What do you reckon about the potential for a socialist coalition of chaos?
It's not a poll, it's an extrapolation. There's a very, very big difference. So what the academics, Thrasher and Rollins, have done is they've taken the local election results and superimposed that across the whole country as if there would be a general election. Two flaws with that. Number one, many of the strongest Labour areas in the country weren't voting. There was much more of a preponderance towards Lib Demi and certainly Conservative areas. And number two, Scotland didn't vote. And Scotland's the wild card because, of course, the SNP are in a state of complete and absolute meltdown, even worse than the Conservatives. I mean, that's saying something, goodness gracious me. So Sunak takes these numbers, and replays the 2015 general election. Unless you vote for us, there'll be a coalition of chaos. It'll be Labour with Greens, SDP, and goodness knows who else. And a vote for reform is a vote for Labour. It's the old playbook. It doesn't work. As you saw in the Blackpool South by-election, where the Conservative vote was down by 26%, the truth is, Tories have had an absolute disaster, and Sunak can try and put whatever spin he wants on it, it doesn't wash.
OK, now look, Nigel, just whizzing it onto a different story. A murder victim's family has hit out at the Home Office after it emerged that her killer should have been deported 20 years ago. Oba Moyo is his name. He was jailed for life for stabbing his ex-partner, Percy Nkube, with a meat skewer in front of her traumatised young children. After he was sentenced, it transpired that he was an illegal migrant. He'd also had a string of previous convictions. Nigel, is the Home Office failing specifically women, do you think, now?
No, it's failing everybody. Women are part of it, but it's failing everybody. Our judges are failing everybody. We are not putting the interests of our own country first. We think that international obligations are far more important. Keep the UN suite, keep the ECHR suite. Oh, and by the way, quietly keep the EU suite. Never admitted, of course, in public. We're much more bothered about international agreements than we are about protecting the interests of our own people.
Yeah, I just wonder when this ends, really, Nigel. I mean, how many more Moyos are there out there at the moment? And, they're reluctant to tell us, aren't they? The government is reluctant to tell us how many criminals are illegal immigrants or asylum applicants, etc.
You and I have discussed this in private, Patrick, haven't we? You can FOI all you like. Getting the data is very, very difficult. And, of course, they don't want us to know the truth of the extent of migrant crime. Otherwise, they fear there will be a huge electoral backlash. We are being denied the truth. We are being denied the figures, but everybody can see it. Everybody can see it. Every week, our newspapers are full of stories like this. And the truth is, it won't end. All the while we have Conservative and Labour governments, all the while we have what are effectively a uni party running this country without any courage, without any guts, without any conviction, scared of what the left-wing mob will say on Twitter or whatever else it may be. Nothing is going to change.
Look, Nigel, thank you very, very much. That is Nigel Farage there, GB News star. Great to have you back, by the way, looking well after your time stateside, so thank you very much. Look, coming up, sectarian politics in Britain is here, and we must not allow it to stay. Stick around at 10 to see astonishing clips from some of Britain's new Muslim councillors, a bit like this.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Yeah, and there's plenty more where that came from. But next, exactly 1 year on from the King's coronation, I will take you behind the scenes with the woman of the moment, apart from the Queen, of course, it's Penny Mordaunt.
We were practising not with the crown jewels at the time, but with replicas. It wasn't until the Thursday we actually got our mitts on the real thing.
Yes, there's plenty of sword chat as well. Don't miss it. This is Patrick Christys tonight. We are only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Scotland, home of Humza Yousaf's hate crime law, aka the Clype's Charter.
Clype, a delightfully Scottish word for a grass, a snitch, or in the context of Russell Finley's opening gambit during the hate crime debate at Holyrood last week, reporting your friends, family and neighbours to the police for alleged hate crimes. The SNP responded by doubling down on the new law's ability to protect vulnerable victims.
I am confident that we have robust legislation that will protect those who are vulnerable to harm.
But other victims are emerging in the wake of this new legislation. As the bill moved through Parliament, concerned rows of police inundated with vexatious complaints, targeting individuals who had committed no crimes. The first fortnight of the new law gave rise to nearly 9,000 complaints.
The vast majority, at least 95%, have been deemed not to be crimes.
False reporting is nothing new. A social post from Scottish Conservative Murdo Fraser was flagged by a trans rights activist in November.
Police decided that no crime had been committed, but nevertheless that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
And Alba Westminster leader Neil Hanvey says he too has been targeted under pre-existing legislation.
I've been the victim of at least one of those complaints, and that's taken up the time of police officers.
Thick skin can be expected of our elected officials, but what about the public? 74-year-old Morag McDougall-Brown says she was reported to police by a neighbour, and the experience has taken its toll.
I hate to think that anybody like me or similar to my age would ever have to go through this, because I really don't think I will ever go over it.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight on GB News, and it's a year to the day since the coronation of King Charles III. Apart from the King himself, of course, the standout performer of that day was Penny Mordaunt. She's the leader of the House of Commons as well as the Lord President of the Privy Council. She stunned everyone with that remarkable, iconic Cape teal dress and her sword-carrying skills. Well, she agreed to do an exclusive interview with GB News in the Privy Council office to relive and share some insight into that historic day, what led up to it and what it meant to her, as well as giving a bit of an insight into what life is like as the Privy Council's Lord President.
I was very nervous. I was determined and very excited, but also very nervous. And I think one of the most wonderful things about the whole event was it was this massive team effort. Not just the people who were with me in the Abbey, but we knew all the rehearsals that had gone on beforehand with the armed forces, that massive procession through London, and we know that it had to be perfect. It had to be absolutely to the minute, and that's a lot of pressure. But we were all working together, and the camaraderie was amazing. And we were practicing not with the crown jewels at the time, but with replicas. It wasn't until the Thursday we actually got our mitts on the real thing. And
what was that like?
It was an amazing occasion, in particular because the King's grandchildren were there as well, and they were very impressed with the crown jewels. But we also had rehearsals going on across the country, including the massive procession that happened. That was literally replicated somewhere out in the sticks, and people were doing that route march to make sure it was absolutely timed to perfection.
And of course I had to ask, how on earth did she keep that sword aloft for the entire coronation ceremony?
No, the sword was very heavy. The question I'd always asked myself when I was doing drill practice on Whale Island with my reserve unit in the pouring rain every Tuesday night was, why am I doing this? Now I know why. It was so I could hold that sword at the coronation. So just an amazing day. And actually the adrenaline on the day just carries you through it. I'd learned from rehearsals that on the day I wasn't going to pick the sword up until I absolutely had to. And so the King's armourer carried it for me before I went into the Abbey, and I didn't put my heels on until I needed to either. Glad I remembered to do that. But so no, you just give yourself every chance of doing your best performance. But really on the day, everything worked perfectly. And I think it was important to the King that he had this amazing ceremony. It was about a third of it had been cut out from the 1953 service, but it was still spectacular, full coronation robes, and I think people would have been disappointed if that wasn't the case. So really amazing spectacle, but he also wanted it to be relevant and modern for the nation as it is now. So I think he kept that role in, the full Lord President role, perhaps because I was a woman and I was representing half the nation. So, and I'm glad he did, because it was an amazing experience.
Mentioned the King there, of course. And what was he like in the build-up to the event? Were you in communication with him quite regularly, I imagine?
Yes, we were rehearsing with the royal family, and he just wanted it to go well. And he also, I think, recognised that obviously it was for him and this important moment in his life, but it was also for the nation. And I think that moments like that really do help reconnect ourselves and remember what this country is all about. No one was complaining that it was an ancient service, because it was so relevant to our modern lives. It was about duty and service to each other. And I think that's what the royal family, what they stand for, what they do, that service and duty to us, but also all that accompanies them, and everything that was on display that day, the armed forces, the Church of England, all these community groups that are there to help our communities, help the nation be all it can be. That's timeless. That's completely relevant to today. And I think the royal family continues because it does reflect the nation. It reflects not just what we stand for and our values, but what families go through. When I paid my tribute to the late Queen, the thing that really struck me when I was looking back on her life is that she shared her whole life and her family with us. That would have been hugely intrusive. I think she said she liked going to Balmoral because she got to sleep in one bed for 6 weeks. It's hard to imagine what a life is like. I mean, as MPs, we run about all over the place, we do crazy things, but it's not for our whole life. And I think that is something that is quite remarkable about our royal family. So I think they're relevant, and we've seen that with the recent news on the King and the Princess of Wales's health. It's a reflection of what families go through.
Now, few public servants meet our monarch face-to-face more than Penny Mordaunt. They meet regularly, often weekly, and she shared with me what King Charles the man is really like.
Well, I think people won't be surprised to know that he's completely charming and always calm, and he's also got a really good sense of humour as well. But he's always asking about how things are going. He's, particular issues that we're dealing with in Parliament, or particular groups who he knows that are having a rough time. He's always asking after those people. So he cares a great deal, and I know that he would have been so pleased to get back to public duties. He will have missed it tremendously. So I think everyone is really pleased to see him back, and I know that he wants to do more. So it's been a good week.
OK, yes, so that's the first part of my interview with the Lord President of the Privy Council and the Leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, who, it must be said, quite a few people are tipping to maybe be the next Conservative leader. I know that there are a lot of mixed views on that, so that's something that no doubt you will all be picking through in gbnews.com/your say. This was confined, I must add, to a conversation about it being a year on from the coronation. But there is more of my exclusive interview with Penny Mordaunt to bring you, including her incredibly touching memories of how she feared for the state of Britain after the late Queen's death. I'm going to bring you as well, on a slightly different note, all the latest on this bizarre BA bomb scare today. So passengers were left on the tarmac for more than 20 minutes, despite this threat being reported.
Cancel takeoff clearance, cancel takeoff clearance. We received some information regarding a bomb threat.
So we've come into possession here at GB News an extended version of that clip. You will absolutely not believe how long it took for the reaction to come into force there. People on the plane thought there was a bomb on the plane. People in the airport thought there was a bomb in the airport. For what it's worth, the actual passengers who were on that plane managed to get another flight, and they're supposedly landing in London in about 5 minutes' time. So will be quite interesting to see if anyone can interview them when they set foot back on British soil. But next, there has been a deluge of staggering clips featuring newly elected Muslim councillors.
We are coming for you in the general election.
Sectarian politics has arrived in Britain. The genie is out of the bottle, it cannot be put back in. So what are Labour and Keir Starmer going to do about it now? I have a procession of quite shocking clips to bring you that I think, quite frankly, makes a lot of people very, very scared about the future of Britain. It's one thing standing democratically, isn't it, and winning. Fair play. But what are you really standing for? And how on earth are some of these candidates getting around the same vetting procedures that other major parties are made to enforce? Isn't it time that someone looked into them? It's Patrick Christys tonight. We are only on GB News, and now, of course, it's time for your weather with Greg Dewhurst.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's becoming drier over the next 24 hours, but with light winds we could see some fog patches tonight developing, and that's thanks to an area of high pressure moving in, which then stays with us for much of the week. Temperatures rising, particularly by the end of the week into the weekend, highs of 24 or 25 in the best of the sunshine. This evening time, still some heavy thundery showers easing away. The rain across southeast England also moves out of the way. Most places dry overnight, but that allows some mist and fog patches to form in places. Under the cloudier skies, temperatures holding up though around 10 or 11 Celsius. So Tuesday morning, a grey start in places, still the risk of some light rain and drizzle across central northern parts of England into southern Scotland, but it does brighten up quite quickly for most parts of the UK. Best of the sunshine across southern parts of England and Wales, perhaps one or two heavy showers developing here. Later on in the afternoon, temperatures rising to around 20 or 21 degrees. A little cooler further north under the cloud, particularly Northern Ireland, southern Scotland here around about 13 or 14 Celsius. A murky start once more on Wednesday, but fog patches lifting and then dry for most, plenty of sunny spells, perhaps some low cloud just lingering around some coastal areas, but feeling warm in that sunshine as temperatures start to lift further, and more sunshine on the way to end the week as well as temperatures rise towards the mid-20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar!
Is this a political takeover?
We are coming for you in the general election.
Will Keir Starmer cave in to the Muslim vote's demands? And
we were practicing not with the crown jewels at the time, but with replicas. It wasn't until the Thursday we actually got our mitts on the real thing.
Is this the woman who should lead the Tories into the next election also?
Council takeoff clearance, council takeoff clearance. We received some information regarding a bomb threat.
I have got the extended, shocking audio recording of exactly what went on at that runway during a BA bomb threat. You will not believe your ears. Plus,
Stop the bombing down, now, now, now! We are the people! We won't be silent!
it's kicking off on campus. On my panel this evening, I'm joined by Express political guru Christian Cowgie, founder of Global Britain Aman Bagal, and anarchist Lisa McKenzie. Oh yeah, and what's all this about?
I have been in a gay bar.
All right, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is the takeover happening? Next.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Israel's defence forces have begun what they're calling a targeted attack against Hamas in the southern city, Gaza city of Rafah. Now, you can see live pictures for those watching on television. The military operation beginning after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that his war cabinet unanimously approved the operation. Strikes are currently being carried out in the east of Rafah. Earlier on, Israel ordered a partial evacuation of civilians ahead of this offensive. Mr. Netanyahu says strikes will increase pressure on Hamas to release Israeli hostages. Comes after Israel rejected a three-phase ceasefire deal, which Hamas claimed to have agreed with Egyptian mediators. An Israeli official described the deal as softened and said that it was a ruse intended to make Israel look bad. However, we understand Israel is sending a delegation to meet with negotiators to try to reach an acceptable agreement. There's been no deal on a ceasefire in Gaza since a week-long pause in November. Students at Oxford and Cambridge have set up Gaza protest camps on university campuses there. Created in the early hours of this morning, the protesters are urging their universities to cut financial ties with Israel over the country's offensive in Gaza. Similar camps have also been set up at Manchester, Sheffield, Newcastle and London universities. Oxford issued a statement saying that we respect our students' and staff members' right to freedom of expression in the form of peaceful protests. Rishi Sunak says he's determined to fight and the general election is not a foregone conclusion. The PM is calling for unity among Tory MPs after saying that he believes Britain could be heading for a hung parliament. The Tories lost hundreds of council seats and the West Midlands mayoralty. Results Rishi Sunak described as bitterly disappointing, but he's saying he won't give up.
What the independent analysis shows that whilst of course this was a disappointing weekend for us, the result of the next general election isn't a foregone conclusion and indeed actually is closer than, or the situation is closer than many people are saying, or indeed some of the opinion polls are predicting. And that's why I'm absolutely determined to fight incredibly hard for what I believe and for the future country that I want to build, and that's what I'm going to do.
Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says he'll table a motion of no confidence in the government in an effort to pressure Rishi Sunak to call a June general election. Sir Ed claims the disastrous local election results show the country has, in his words, had enough of Mr Sunak and his out-of-touch government. The motion will be tabled when Parliament returns tomorrow. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Straight back to Patrick.
The local elections have taken place in England. Not that you'd know it. Political Islam, I fear, is here.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar!
That's the Green Party candidate. I wonder what his views on net zero are. We will be seeing him on the front line, I imagine, of the next Extinction Rebellion rally, won't we? He's now under investigation, though, because it turns out that the 42-year-old father of 3, who works as an accountant and runs a gardening blog, has previously described a Jewish chaplain forced into hiding by threats from protesters as a creep and a kind of animal. He also reportedly said that Palestine, i.e. Hamas, had a right to fight back in the wake of the October 7th attacks. Well, I, for one, am shocked. Let's go to Bradford now.
Horton, Great Horton, Manningham, Heaton, City Ward, and Collar. I'm going to tell you something here. This is a clear message to Starmer. Bradford has rejected Labour. It's rejected Zionism. And this is a message to you, Nash Shah and Imran Hussain. We are coming for you in the general election. Anyone that stands with Zionism, we're coming after you. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
The rumour is he's still going, actually. That is in no way threatening. This video has emerged from Burnley, apparently, where, again, there was a totally normal reaction to a local election victory in a northern English town. Step forward, the ex-Conservative councillor Tiger Patel, who started out making videos like this, where he wanted to fix up his local community park. And now he's graduated to making videos about how he wants to fix up Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi, Juma Mubarak, all my Muslim brothers and sisters. I'm a Tiger Patel from Blackburn, front of the town hall. And I say today, this is not my victory. This is Palestine innocent people victory.
Look, hey, maybe I'm a cynic. Maybe I'm being unfair here. But I'm not sure this is really all about Palestine and Gaza, is it? The MuslimVote.co.uk, a movement that we first highlighted months ago on this show, has greeted the local election victories with a list of 18 demands for the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Now, yes, some of those include things like end military ties to Israel and recognise the Palestinian state. But they also include stuff like issue guidance that Muslims are allowed to pray at school and ensure Sharia-compliant pensions are available at every workplace, so the 1/3 of Muslim people without a pension can get one. All right. They also want to remove Michael Gove's extremism definition. Can I just return now to Mutin Ali, the Green Party candidate in Leeds, who won and started shouting about Allah? A very basic Google search of that man throws up that he was reportedly known for stirring up hostility to Rabbi Zachariah Deutsch, that Jewish chaplain at Leeds University, who was subsequently advised by police to go into hiding with his wife and 2 children after death and rape threats. What's the vetting process for these people to be candidates? Where's the scrutiny? Is it not very telling that Labour's response to people with these, I would argue, radical views, displayed in a ranting, quite threatening manner, is to say that they want to win them back, not distance themselves? I think that political Islam is here in Britain, and it looks like it's here to stay. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. This evening, I am joined by the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express. I have got Christian Calgi. I've got anarchist and academic Lisa McKenzie. And I am joined as well by the founding chairman of Global Britain UK, Aman Bagal. Christian, should we fear a political wing of Islam, do you think?
Well, it's certainly having cut through in local council elections and by-elections. And the thing is, they're clearly very organised. But what they're doing is they're targeting quite poor, left-behind places, areas with low electoral turnout. They are reaping the rewards. But as you were just saying, these are council elections. I don't think that chap has many views on bin collections or pothole repairs or social care, things that matter to people in the area. What on earth does Gaza have to do with a local election? And really, the Green Party have massive questions to answer here, because what they've done in the pursuit of seats at any cost is allowed themselves to become this random basket of deplorables that is full of all sorts of cranks and weirdos from any wing, and it's a totally incoherent party, and they've allowed some really dodgy characters to infiltrate it.
Yeah, I mean, they have. I mean, just a Google search of that man reveals some incredibly fruity stuff that he's allegedly been involved with. How on earth was that man and others like him allowed to actually stand for election?
Because we live in a country with a system that allows certain groups to not be held accountable. The Greens are never going to be held accountable for this because although, you know, they're not ever going to win any real electoral power, they're never going to have any power in Westminster, so they're not going to be held accountable. I remember this happening with the Lib Dems at the Iraq War. The similar sort of thing started to happen there. And what happened? The Lib Dems couldn't wait to get a bit of power, and when they did, they were held accountable for things that they'd done, and very quickly all of the sort of cranks and weirdos fell away.
Yeah, but there was the immediate crossover from something that I think many people had long suspected. And I know that many viewers and listeners to this show had long suspected, Aman, that this isn't actually really all about Palestine and Gaza. I fear that this is about the slow creeping hand of Sharia in the UK.
But look at it this way, I think, Patrick. These are the very fringe elements of British society. And the fact is, until recently, the vast majority of them were active members and councillors in the Labour Party, until George Galloway bust them down. Don't forget, was it Azhar Ali, who was the anti-Semitic candidate from Labour, who had to disown last minute? So they've always been there. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, Tiger Patel was in the Conservative Party, to be
fair. He was, and I think he should have never been allowed to stand as a Conservative in the first place. But the vast majority of them were in Labour until Keir Starmer tried to do this balancing act of trying to appear moderate and trying to be electable from Middle England.
Well, just on that, because, look, the obvious counter to all of this is that this was an election, and they stood for election, they bothered to stand and campaign for election, and they were elected, OK? So we can't take that away from anyone, and people will be shouting at their television screens now going, well, if you don't like it, you should have stood for election in that area, and you should have campaigned better and got more votes. So that is the counter for it. But, Christian, the Labour Party response to this appears to be, we need to win these people back, not, thank goodness you're nowhere near the Labour Party at the moment.
No, absolutely right. I mean, why they want them back is beyond me. I think Keir Starmer actually will be incredibly relieved from the West Midlands mayoral result, not just because they beat the Conservative Party, but also if they hadn't, if they just lost out, then immediately people would have looked at the independent candidate who took 10% of the vote and almost certainly said, well, we didn't win because they took a lot of our votes that we would otherwise have won, so we've got to pander to this group. So hopefully Keir Starmer has a confidence that he doesn't need to pander, and from what I've seen, actually, it does appear to be a lot of warm words. I don't think, fingers crossed, they're going to give in to a lot of these demands, but some of them are really worrying. One of the ones you didn't mention was press regulation, which goodness knows, they want new press regulation. What do they mean by that? What sort of free speech there do they want to clamp down on? It's very concerning.
Yeah.
I used to be in a group called Class War, an anarchist group, and we used to make demands of everybody all the time, and it's a way of sort of getting your voice out there and getting known and saying something. I mean, when that camera panned round, there was 10 people, if that. So I think they are fringe elements. They're making a lot of noise. I'm not sure we should be taking them that seriously. I don't take them that seriously.
I think that's... I mean this with respect. I think that's a mistake. I think we should be taking this lot very, very seriously indeed. That would be my view, but Aman.
I agree with you, Patrick. I mean, let's be honest. The Labour Party has always been a bastion of rotten identity politics. And we've already seen the newly elected Labour mayor of the West Midlands has been tweeting not about the West Midlands, as his first tweet after becoming mayor, but about Israel and Gaza. And the same goes for Sadiq Khan, same goes for Lisa Nandi, and same goes for Keir Starmer. So they do want these votes back. and they're pandering to them, and we will see more of it.
Well, one thing I will say, which is a caveat to this, and I mean it, is that I think in this country, clearly, we've been far too complacent for far too long, and, you know, people have potentially allowed a problem to fester, and they're not necessarily stood against that problem, and now here we are. So I wonder whether or not the tide will turn eventually. But we reached out to the Green Party and to Motin Ali for comment. We didn't hear back. He was probably gardening, isn't he, to be fair? Anyway, I'll give you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, and bring you a full version of this dramatic audio from a British Airways bomb scare.
Cancel takeoff clearance, cancel takeoff clearance. We received some information regarding a bomb threat.
40 minutes those people were trapped on an aeroplane with conceivably a bomb ticking before. It's absolutely astonishing. Wait till you hear it all. But next, the second part of my exclusive interview with the Lord President of the Privy Council. It's Penny Mordaunt, exactly 1 year on from King Charles's coronation.
Because it was my first week in the job. So on the Monday I was a junior trade minister, Tuesday I was promoted, Wednesday we tried to have a meeting with the Queen, and then on the Thursday she passed away, and on the Saturday we were doing the Accession Council.
Yeah, we've got some fascinating insights for you there. This is Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A man who worked for Sainsbury's for 20 years was sacked because he didn't pay for a few bags for life. Niamke Dofu put his shopping through a self-service checkout after his night shift, and CCTV showed him choosing the zero bags used option, and he was fired for gross misconduct. Well, joining me now to discuss this in our studio is the lawyer and broadcaster and great friend of the show, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, welcome to the studio. Join you, Martin. Certainly is. Now, on the one hand, yes, he was caught banged to rights on CCTV. It looked like, and the tribunal agreed, he stole the bags, but a 20-year career dashed on the rocks over 60p?
Yeah, I mean, the headlines are horrendous, aren't they? You sort of turn around on that sort of basis. So basically, there must be a valid reason for dismissing an employee, and you have to follow due process and so on and so forth. So they can look at about capability or conduct. And there has to be appropriate procedures set in place under employment law to afford that sort of protection. What they say, however, if there's gross misconduct, you can be dismissed instantly.
Yeah.
Now, gross misconduct includes criminal offence like theft. And the reality is, in the law, if you take property, whatever its value, with the intent of permanently depriving the person of it, then that is theft. And so what they did, they looked at the CCTV footage, and the Employment Tribunal had a look at this sort of stuff, and the guy wasn't just pressed no bags, he went backwards and forwards and so on and so forth. So he knew he was getting bags, and what they sort of turned in, I always sort of trust comes in on foot, but leaves on horseback. And so what Sainsbury's are saying in their defence is, hang on, we lost trust in the guy, even though 20 years and so on and so forth. We need to make sure we have trust in our employees.
Do you think they've thrown the book at him, thrown the bag at him, to make all of us worry about us being watched by CCTV? Is this fella a scapegoat?
Oh, I think without doubt it's a story and a warning for everybody.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News, and it's time now for part 2 of my exclusive interview with Penny Mordaunt, senior Tory MP, leader of the House of Commons and Lord President of the Privy Council. It is quite the CV, and after our sit-down interview, Penny Mordaunt showed me some iconic and ceremonial royal artefacts that only a select group of people get to see and even touch. It is a fascinating insight into how the Privy Council works and Mordaunt's reflection on the late Queen's passing. They're both unique and emotional. Shall we have a look?
And the King will have these, and that's where all his government papers will be given to him, that he will do every day. It has the new cipher on, and this is my job title, so that's what I will use. But everything has had to have the ciphers changed on it, so we're trying to do this gradually. But what's not often appreciated is for the coronation, all the uniforms needed the ciphers changed on them, so everyone's dress uniforms needed altering. So there was a massive embroidery network around the country to change everything ready for the day.
All these little things people don't think of. All that work. Has that sunk in yet? I mean, it must have done by now, surely.
It's a great job title. I don't have a business card, but it is a privilege to do it, and you really do. I think not a lot of people know about the role, and actually it wasn't perhaps until the coronation people knew that there was such a thing as the Privy Council.
What's the day-to-day, if you don't mind me asking? What is the day-to-day of it all then, really, for you?
So the Privy Council does a huge amount of work, and I'd be sent to the Tower if I go into it in too much detail.
Oh, well, there you go.
But it is things like making coins and granting charters and those sorts of things. And then sometimes sort of very real live issues. So, for example, someone might want and need to be buried in a particular churchyard that hasn't done burials for a while. And again, the Privy Council would be granting permission for those sorts of things to happen. So it's very, very varied, but it is all tied back to things like our royal charters and coinage and all that sort of thing.
It's absolutely fascinating. Should we work our way down then, if that's all right? So
this is a seal, which I think we can pick up. These are very heavy, so you can have a feel of that. So these, again, will be marking documents like this. So all government departments will have the seals of office. So when we swear in a new Secretary of State, they're given their seals of office. And some of them are little things like that. Others are enormous, and
there's a weight.
People have difficulty lifting them.
I don't want to drop it just in
but
case I smash it.
They are in use in departments occasionally. People have to produce those sorts of documents.
Now this looks very official.
Yes, so this is an example of a charter that the late Queen did, and they're produced quite often, and this is obviously the seal that was given on this one.
Yeah, and the memories of the late Queen, because we've spoken a lot today about the coronation. Unfortunately, for there to be a coronation, the previous monarch has to pass away, don't they, usually? So that must have been quite difficult overcoming those emotions as well, presumably, for you?
That was quite a time, because it was my first week in the job. So on the Monday I was a junior trade minister, Tuesday I was promoted, Wednesday we tried to have a meeting with the Queen, and then on the Thursday she passed away, and on the Saturday we were doing the Accession Council. And we had identified the moment we lost the sovereign as a moment of peril for the nation, because you don't know how the public will react. And of course we know that they reacted in the most marvellous ways. You know, marmalade sandwiches across our parks and all sorts of things. But we didn't know that at the time. So I felt the pressure considerably as we were doing the Accession Council. And after I delivered it, I came outside into St James's Palace Yard to hear the first proclamation being delivered that the King had just commanded be delivered from the balcony. And after it was done, the guards did 3 cheers to the King. and I could hear over the palace wall the crowds cheering the king. And at that moment, I knew it was going to be all right. And I did shed a tear, because it was such a relief that the public had responded in such a marvellous way.
Well, I get a bit emotional thinking about it now, actually. But yes, I mean, that's an incredible thing to think about, that you went through that so early on in the job as well. And this here is quite interesting, because I was being told before that I don't know if I'm allowed to touch this. The whole thing might unravel, actually.
You'll be allowed to pick up this, so, as long as you're very careful with it.
Okay. Well,
don't run around with it.
Don't run around with it. No. Now the king has touched this more than a few times, hasn't he? Because it's got some significance. He pricks this chancellor with it. Is that right? This scroll.
Yes. This is how we make sheriffs. So I will read out who we are proposing to make a sheriff, and he will signify his permission being granted by pricking the. This is
yes,
used to be vellum.
You're braver than me, so I don't want. I'm going to put this back down here.
So that's how we make sheriffs.
So every single sheriff here has got their name, and then
so he will signify his approval of them as being his sheriffs.
It's incredible to think that the king has done all of this. Yeah, being that president. It's not for you. You meet him every other week. But yes, okay. And this Secretary of State box here.
So this is again just another little red box, and it will have. This has got a couple of seals in it. So I'm not sure. Let's just see if I can tell which department those are from. If we could turn this round,
if that's all right.
Yeah, certainly.
Show everybody at home what we're looking at here.
So these again, they're used in documents, not every week, but occasionally, and. When a Secretary of State is sworn in, they're given their seals of office, and then they return them when they're out of office.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So yes, when there's a general election, then they have to scoop them all back in, apparently, and then dish
and
them
return
out again.
them. Yes.
But yes. Well, look. Thank you very, very much for showing us around all this and being so open about it all. I know that our viewers and listeners will really, really care about it, and it's a pleasure to get to know you a bit better as well. So.
Well, thank you, and thank you to everyone that has supported His Majesty and the Queen throughout this year. I think that it's a tremendous effort that people have made, and it's very much appreciated.
Well, that was Lord President of the Privy Council and the Leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, there, and I just would like to say thank you very, very much to her and her team as well for letting us see all those artefacts and do all of that. So that was very, very nice of them. Thank you. So coming up, I do bring you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and give you the latest on these alarming reports. Yes, this has happened whilst we've been on air. So apparently, the Ministry of Defence has been hacked by a Chinese hacker. So I'll repeat that for you. The Ministry of Defence has apparently been hacked by a Chinese hacker. Plus, we will be talking about pro-Palestine protesters plumbing new depths as they heckle the survivors of the October 7th terror attack during a Holocaust memorial march. Oh, grief. Look, more of tomorrow's news tonight, and that's next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's becoming drier over the next 24 hours, but with light winds we could see some fog patches tonight developing, and that's thanks to an area of high pressure moving in, which then stays with us for much of the week. Temperatures rising, particularly by the end of the week into the weekend, highs of 24 or 25 in the best of the sunshine. This evening time, still some heavy thundery showers easing away. The rain across southeast England also moves out of the way. Most places dry overnight, but that allows some mist and fog patches to form in places. Under the cloudier skies, temperatures holding up though around 10 or 11 Celsius. So Tuesday morning, a grey start in places, still the risk of some light rain and drizzle across central northern parts of England into southern Scotland, but it does brighten up quite quickly for most parts of the UK. Best of the sunshine across southern parts of England and Wales, perhaps one or two heavy showers developing here. Later on in the afternoon, temperatures rising to around 20 or 21 degrees. A little cooler further north under the cloud, particularly Northern Ireland, southern Scotland here around about 13 or 14 Celsius. A murky start once more on Wednesday, but fog patches lifting and then dry for most, plenty of sunny spells, perhaps some low cloud just lingering around some coastal areas, but feeling warm in that sunshine as temperatures start to lift further, and more sunshine on the way to end the week as well as temperatures rise towards the mid-20s.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, look, it is time now to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it. OK, we're going with the Metro. 30 missed chances to find a brain tumour, sickness, migraines and stiff neck, minor issues. A schoolgirl, Tia Gordon, is recovering from surgery for a brain tumour, finally diagnosed after 30 medical assessments. Let's go to the Daily Express. Britain is on the verge of a house price boom. Britain is on the verge of a house price boom, with experts predicting values will soar 20% in the next 4 years. Slightly optimistic, I think. 20% is anything to do with a shortage, maybe. But anyway, the eye, Alzheimer's genetic link raises hope of early treatment. A major study has found that anyone with 2 copies of the APOE4 gene has at least a 95% chance of developing the disease. Up to 3% of the population. They kind of make that sound like a good thing initially here in the headline there, which I don't think they're meaning to. But the genetic breakthrough presumably does make it easier for you to treat it earlier and spot the signs. So I think that really is the, well, good news in a way. The Guardian. Israeli airstrikes on Rafah begin. Despite rising ceasefire pressure, yeah, that was breaking as we came on air tonight. We've shown you live footage of Rafah, where Israel has begun that offensive. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph now. Netanyahu rejects Hamas ceasefire. Israel criticises deal as a ruse after Gazans are seen celebrating on the streets of Rafah. Well, again, you know, potentially not for long, given what's happening there. Right, look, I am going to reintroduce my panel. We've got senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie, anarchist and academic Lisa McKenzie, and founding chairman of Global Britain, Aman Bagal. I want to bring you some news that's developing as we speak, OK? So, apparently, the Chinese state has hacked our Ministry of Defence. That's according to Sky News initially, but China stands accused of 2 or 3 attempts at hacking the Ministry of Defence employees, including personnel. The cyber attack was reportedly on a payroll system with current service personnel and some veterans. It largely names, apparently, and bank details that have been exposed, but still, as it currently stands, Christian, the Chinese state, it appears, has hacked our Ministry of Defence.
Yes, another deeply concerning move from China, the latest in a long line of espionage that we are aware of publicly. Goodness knows what's happening that we're not aware of. It's also worth bearing in mind, of course, that our Foreign Secretary is still Lord Cameron, whose main foreign policy time in office as Prime Minister was opening Britain up to China and further endangering us.
Can I just say, so we have contacted the Ministry of Defence in the last few minutes, and I've just heard now the Ministry of Defence are confirming they've been hacked, Aman, but they are refusing to say the word China. Basically. That's what they're refusing.
Other outlets seem to be naming them, so I'll stick my neck out on that one.
I mean, look at this way. I think these are multiple attacks that democracies around the world face from the Chinese communists. But let's be honest, literally half the country is running on Huawei and Xiaomi. So the fact they've actually done this, they've done this to make a point to Britain and to British democracy. But even more than that, let's be honest, the Chinese communist tentacles are everywhere in British society, be it our academic institutions, be it the fact that we've had recently, two officials from Parliament charged with espionage working for the Chinese communists.
Can you call them communists? I mean, really? They're not.
By your definition.
No, not my
I knew this was coming.
By the anarchist on the panel's definition, the Chinese are... I mean, go on.
Well, it's a totalitarian state, isn't it? It's not a...
communism just tend to always veer towards it.
Yeah,
it's
but I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can actually go the threat of communists.
Well, yeah, okay, fine.
Okay,
I appreciate. So your main gripe with the fact that the Chinese have hacked our Ministry of Defence and have their tentacles everywhere in society is that we have erroneously referred to as communists.
I'm not down with the communists at all, because historically, communists always kill the anarchists anyway. If you look at
do anarchists tend to fare anyway?
They don't, not very well. No one really likes them. But we don't like them much anyway.
No, indeed. Well, I think, look at it this way. I think the fact that the UK decided to classify the Chinese as strategic competitors and not as a hostile entity goes to show how out of touch our political class are, sadly.
But interestingly, the EU today is sort of making quite bold statements for them about China, because apparently they've been flooding the EU market with cheap goods. I think they've been doing that for I think they've been doing that for a long time. But the EU's now, they're not happy about it, and they've also warned them about sending things that could be used as military aid to Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I like the fact that it's taken the EU's single market to be infringed for them to suddenly realise that China might be a threat. I've just got a little bit more of an update. So this is, just some more information about this hack, right? So apparently a contractor system, which is, I believe, what has been hacked, is not connected to the main MOD computer systems and has been taken down with a review. Look, well, that's a relief. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. But no, what's it going to take, seriously, for us to stand up more to China? I mean, aren't we just terrified of them?
Well, I think it's more a fear that lots of Western economies have been built on very, very shaky foundations over the last 20 or 30 years. What we've done is we've almost sort of prostituted out our economy to these very, very unreliable global partners. That was what David Cameron and George Osborne were doing. And my prediction, really over the next decade, 2 decades, is what the right is going to do, what the mainstream right of conservatism, it's going to start prioritising national security over unabetted free markets, and that's going to be the big trend going forward.
That's kind of where we are. That's kind of where we are, because it's not about, can we do without the cheap stuff that comes from China?
But I would argue that's the easy political way out. I mean, look, for example, India runs a trade deficit with the Chinese, and yet Prime Minister Modi took the effort to ban TikTok before the Americans are wanting to do it. It takes political gumption, and that's what we need in this country.
I actually do think that TikTok is a bigger threat to society than many people realise. I appreciate that we are on GB News, we are on TikTok, and you should obviously check us out on it. But and it's a fantastic little vortex of TikTok that is, of course, free from all of the negatives. But there we go. Anyway, moving on. Pro-Palestine activists have sparked condemnation after they staged a protest. And I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Near Auschwitz, while Israelis, including October the 7th survivors, marched to honour victims of the Holocaust. Sorry, but it's just all so depressing, isn't it, this? Eyewitnesses even claim that the protesters were chanting directly at the March of the Living event, which takes place every year to mark Holocaust Remembrance Day. I mean, look, these pro-Palestine protests, I mean, that surely crosses the line
Well, I think the line was crossed a very long time ago, Patrick. I mean, look, the vast majority of this pro-Palestine activism is rooted very much in nothing else but very bad, old-fashioned anti-Jewish hatred. It's not about peace. It's not about preventing war. It's not about trying to prevent any atrocity. It's about bad, old-fashioned anti-Jewish hate. That's what it is.
To be honest, I'm getting a bit depressed by all of this stuff. So I thought I would just mix it up a little bit now and talk about a good old-fashioned bomb threat. So passengers on a flight from Bermuda bound for London last night were forced to make an emergency evacuation after this alarming message from air traffic control.
Seabird 18 Bravo, Bermuda Tower, cancel takeoff clearance, cancel takeoff clearance. We received some information regarding a bomb threat.
Okay, cancel takeoff clearance, Seabird 18 Bravo, and would you like us to leave the runway?
Seabird 18 Bravo, negative, hold position, standby.
Seabird 18 Bravo, you got any further information for us?
Seabird 18 Bravo, I was just on the phone with the airport duty officer and they reported that they received an email saying that there is a bomb on board, and we are currently working on getting the authorities out and getting you to an isolated area to disembark, possibly.
Right, so look, just to add to the panic, there was a lengthy delay of 40 minutes in getting passengers off the aeroplane, and the pilot was, at times... I mean, he's quite a cool customer there, to be fair on him, but at times was just like, can we just get some stairs so we can get these passengers off?
Okay, so it's 40 minutes now since you gave us the bomb threat. We really should have fire engines surrounding the aircraft, and if it goes on for much longer, we will have to evacuate fire supplies. And further to that, we will need ambulances now as well, please.
40 minutes on a plane with apparently a bomb somewhere ticking away underneath you. The stairs did eventually arrive. All the passengers made it off the plane safely before, luckily, the all-clear was given. The flight was delayed overnight. The passengers eventually arrived in London just under an hour ago, we think, anyway. I mean, honestly, seriously, your reaction, Lisa, if you were on that plane, oh, you're an anarchist, you just let it rip, wouldn't you?
Well, I would want to know who was...
This is how it ends.
You know, whose bomb it was. Before I made a judgment.
Right. Was it ethical or not?
Yeah. You know, was it... which side am I on the bomb?
I mean, given recent headlines, it's difficult to know what's more dangerous, being sat stationary with a bomb or flying with Boeing. Because that's equally pretty...
The notoriously litigious Boeing here, who, of course, I'll just say I've never met this man before. I don't know anything about him. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Go on, have a list.
Well, I think, is this a case for renationalising BAA?
But possibly. Can I just say, I have had some shocking experiences on British Airways recently. My latest interaction on an aeroplane was a Ryanair flight. Now, I actually... despite being dug out on numerous occasions online, weirdly, by Ryanair's press team, I actually like flying on Ryanair, apart from the fact that this time they tried to charge me €30 as I went onto the plane for a cabin bag that they said was too big, which obviously wasn't. There was a woman sat in my seat who told me to off when I got there, and then a man was arrested on the tarmac when we touched back down at Stansted. So we'll not be flying with Ryanair again, although they have offered to take migrants to Rwanda. So there we go. Now, coming up, more of tomorrow's front pages, and I will show you what happens next here as Greek Easter goes a bit potty. Or what could possibly go wrong? Stay tuned to find out.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
So J. Cole, who is a rapper, says that he felt terrible after releasing a song aimed at fellow rapper Kendrick Lamar and vowed to pull the track off streaming services. He said, "I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The past 2 days felt terrible," he told an audience at the Dreamville Festival in North Carolina. "I damn near had a relapse," he said.
There's a lot of young people, especially, you know, that would look at that and they will take it not just as entertainment.
It doesn't happen in any other form of art that I can think of. This is not happening in country music, is it?
Well, it's the same. It's the same problem in both cases, isn't it? Who's doing the regulating? And surely it's each case on its merits, isn't it? You don't just ban a genre.
Why is there such a lot of hatred for a man who usually would have trash talked back to stand up and say, you know, this doesn't sit well with me and I love this guy? If we look at, I think his name was Cody Fisher, the semi-professional footballer who died in a club because someone stabbed him. Now, he was stabbed because he stepped on someone's trainers. This is the level of ego we're seeing from a lot of young men who don't have any output of being able to channel that energy, and a lot of it is stemming from cultures like football, hip-hop, these sorts of things. So I'm just saying it's refreshing to see a man who could have easily wiped the floor with his lyrics say, I don't have to, you know?
That is interesting, isn't it? Because I took this interview in the wrong direction. It's not about pointing out the areas of concern. Actually, this story is saying, look, music and art can be giving you an example of how to live a slightly better life.
That's free speech. Saying, sorry, I'm sorry, I choose not to fight back because I love you. It may look like a wimpy thing to do, but it's still free speech.
You know what? I love you, Paul. Sorry about earlier.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight, and it's time to return to tomorrow's front pages. Let's do it. Here's the Times. No truce yet, says Israel. Netanyahu, Hamas-backed deal doesn't meet our demands. Let's go to the Independent. Ceasefire pressure builds as Israel set for Rafah invasion. I can confirm that Israel has now invaded Rafah, or extended their invasion into Rafah. The Mirror. Our chance to save young lives. So Molly's dad in tech plea. The dad of a girl who sadly took her own life due to harmful web content warns delays to an online crackdown will cost lives. He says more will be lost unless there's new online safety. We go to the Daily Mail. How could Greens not know about vile rant over Rabbi? I mean, we've discussed this, haven't we, really? It's the party leader... the Green Party leader, claims ignorance about a councillor in anti-Semitism row, despite a Daily Mail expose months ago. This is that, Alu Akbar Green candidate who, to everyone's surprise, turned out to actually have said some fruity things about people in the past. And I think it does speak, as Christian was saying earlier, to how desperate the Green Party were to have some form of council representation, really, that they would have sold it down the Swanee. But back to my press part now. Senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Cowgie, anarchist and academic Lisa Mackenzie, and founding chairman of Global Britain UK. It's Aman Bagal. Yeah, look, I mean, honestly, how could they not have known, really? This ceasefire pressure on Israel, though, I mean, it is the breaking news of the night. It is what's leading the news agenda. It will probably be leading the news agenda tomorrow. Israel has invaded Rafah. Is this going to have widespread consequences here, Christian? Do you think they are justified in trying to root out Hamas once and for all?
Look, I'm now personally getting to the point of being in two minds about what Israel is doing. I'm a vociferous supporter of Israel and have been throughout their campaign in the Gaza Strip since October the 7th. But the problem, of course, is that throughout its mission to root out Hamas and return hostages, they have constantly been telling the Gazans to get to Rafah. That is where millions have gone to seek safe haven. The rest of the Gaza Strip is almost unlivable now, and now they're being told, oh, you need to get out of the one livable area and find somewhere else. And we are getting to that point where no matter how much pre-warning Israel gave, of course we want them to get their hostages back, and Hamas are entirely responsible for what is happening. But on a humanitarian ground, I don't see how this can go ahead without very bad casualties.
I mean, I think, again, this is obviously much more complicated than I'm going to make out now, but I think if I was an Israeli, I would probably want them to eradicate Hamas once and for all. I don't know how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think lots of things with this are all true at the same time. I think it's important that whatever hostages are left that are alive gets home. So I think there's a big part of the Israeli population that desperately wants to have some hope about the hostages. I think as every day goes on, it's less likely that any of them are going to come out. Netanyahu is under great political pressure there. And I think the way that perhaps some of the Western universities and students and pro-Palestine cranks are behaving is not doing the Palestinians any good at all. And so for me, I think there's lots of things here that's true at the same time. But there is one thing that is true, and that is that the Palestinian people really, you know, they are suffering now. And none of us should take any delight that children and women are dying. None of us should do that.
And quickly on this.
Indeed, I think I echo what you just said. Nobody wants to take any delight. And this is sadly war. And this is a war that has been brought upon the Palestinian people by Hamas and by Hamas alone. And Israel is doing a favour to the whole region and the Palestinians by finally wanting to eradicate Hamas fully.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I look at the amount of conflicts going on in the quotes-unquote Muslim world, committed often by Islamists or Islamic regimes against other Muslims, it does stand out to me as though there is more outrage at this, and I can't help but wonder if that's because it's being perpetrated by a Jewish regime. I don't know, but there are a lot of issues in that region. Look, let's move on. Something, thankfully, much lighter, although not for the poor woman involved, it must be said. When you jet off to the Greek island of Corfu, you're expecting sun, sea, relaxation. But that wasn't the case for this unlucky woman who fell victim to a Greek Easter tradition of pot throwing. She's fine, apparently. I hope so. So that is the mayor of that particular region of Corfu, and all the press is there, and it's, you know, I'm going to throw this giant pot out of the window now. Wallop. Oh, yeah, not great, is it? Not great. That's a resigning matter, probably, that, to be fair. Anyway, right, it's time to reveal today's greatest Bristling Union jackass. Do you remember who your greatest Briton is?
I do.
Yes.
I do. I'm so awake. It's Jeremy Clarkson, a lifelong idol of mine, it must be said, but specifically my housemates and I sat down to watch the latest series of Clarkson's Farm on Amazon on Friday, and it is just the best show to have come out in the last 5 years. It is so entertaining but heartbreaking and emotional, and fundamentally showcases the wonderful job that British farmers do and the nightmare situations they have to go through. And I think everyone should watch it.
All right.
Brilliant.
Well, I will watch it a bit later on. Lisa?
I think mine was the Great British Public for not... Is that right?
Well, we'll find out.
Yes, I had to.
The people who didn't vote in the local elections.
So the people that kind of looked at the local elections and said, you know what? None of the above. Okay. And I thought that was a great thing for democracy.
You have got some bizarre views. Anyway, all right, Amran, go on.
Well, look, for me, it's got to be Andy Street. I think he has fought a very valiant fight, and the great British dignity he has shown over the last 2 days, and not to mention, of course, the way he has helped turbocharge the West Midlands with foreign direct investment, with levelling up. And I think it's a real sad day to see him go. His replacement is already talking about everything other than West Midlands.
Yes, well, again, yes, another shock. Right, today's greatest Briton is Jeremy Clarkson. Well, hey, well done, Jazza. Right, who is your union jackass, Christian?
It's the co-leaders of the Green Party. Can you tell I selected this before I realised we were going to spend 2 hours talking about the Green Party? Just to recap, yeah, I just think what they've done is idiotic, and they've opened themselves up to obvious criticism in a desperate attempt to win council seats. And fundamentally, I don't understand how a party that is 50% pink and blue haired, you know, insane lefty commies, and essentially sort of right-wing religious nationalist Muslims. Do these people even know that they're both in the same party?
You know what I blame on this a lot of the is the increasing death of local journalism, because stuff like this would have come out a lot sooner. Why were people confronted by this on election? They're like, hang on a flip, what's happened here? Right, sorry, we're going to have to be quickly. So who's Union Jackass?
Mine was Keir Starmer. Because he went to Mansfield last week, and I think with all this sort of the Gaza and stuff and the pro-Palestine people not going to vote for Starmer, I think he's trying to win back the Red Wall, But I think that the people of the Red Wall...
that is his job. You understand that's his job.
But he's not cared about us for such a long time.
All right, fair enough. Go on about his union jackass.
My one's got to be this puffed up Papinjay, this union jackass called Sadiq Khan. He's won a third term as London mayor and he's now back to being mayor of Gaza.
Flipping heck. Right, obviously Sadiq Khan would deny trying to be the mayor of Gaza. But anyway, the winners are those two Green leaders that Christys said. Right, look, thank you. I've had a proper laugh tonight. I've enjoyed it for the most part. Anyway, and it's Headliners up next with a much more in-depth look at tomorrow's newspapers. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Keep fighting the good fight.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's becoming drier over the next 24 hours, but with light winds we could see some fog patches tonight developing, and that's thanks to an area of high pressure moving in, which then stays with us for much of the week. Temperatures rising, particularly by the end of the week into the weekend, highs of 24 or 25 in the best of the sunshine. This evening time, still some heavy thundery showers easing away. The rain across southeast England also moves out of the way. Most places dry overnight, but that allows some mist and fog patches to form in places. Under the cloudier skies, temperatures holding up though around 10 or 11 Celsius. So Tuesday morning, a grey start in places, still the risk of some light rain and drizzle across central northern parts of England into southern Scotland, but it does brighten up quite quickly for most parts of the UK. Best of the sunshine across southern parts of England and Wales, perhaps one or two heavy showers developing here. Later on in the afternoon, temperatures rising to around 20 or 21 degrees. A little cooler further north under the cloud, particularly Northern Ireland, southern Scotland here around about 13 or 14 Celsius. A murky start